Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the host's favorite NFL coaches is Matt LaFleur. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. Yeah. I am so happy, not just because Ben Solak is here once again, not just because we have actual football to talk about. We are going to preview all of the games. I'll get to that in a second. But because, Ben, I have some pretty great news.
Oh, yeah?
I can't remember. Maybe I already said this in the podcast. You're going to be coming on every other week during the regular season to do this. So this is the first of many, many previews. And what a preview it is. In the past, I've like 4 to 6 games. What we're going to do today is talk about every single game because I figured it's week 1. We owe it to every fan base to talk about their team. And we're going to see how it goes. If it takes 5 hours, I will probably never do it again. But if it moves quickly and it feels good and feels like we've got stuff on every team, I might do this, a few more times, especially near the beginning of the season. How do you feel about that?
Well, because now every team might be good. And so you have to acknowledge, like, oh, what if the Chargers-Raiders game could be crazy. Commanders-Bucs could be big. I don't think this will last long into the season, especially because I don't trust our ability to be brief, but I'm willing to, like all fan bases, have some hope here in September.
The way I pitched this to you or explained it and the way we're going to talk about these games is we're going to basically say something that has to happen for each side to win. And you are going to take the away teams. I am going to take the home teams. So it's going to be very matchup oriented. I will say this, after going through the entire slate of games and also picking one for my Survivor League, it's actually mostly pretty close games. Like there aren't that many like wildly loud. Now some of that again is because at the beginning of the season we don't know what some of these teams might be way better than we thought. Some of these teams might be way worse than we thought. But when you look at games like the marquee games, for example, Chiefs, Ravens, Packers, Eagles, they're pretty evenly matched, and I think that's what makes this week particularly interesting.
Yeah, only one game that's over a touchdown right now, right? Which is Bengals Patriots, I think, right? 7.5. Other than that, like Bills Cardinals is 6.5, right? Like most games are within a score. Are you Bengals for Survivor? I've been figuring that out today too.
I have the Bengals right now, which is the most common pick, but yeah. I also have the Bengals because I feel comfortable using that team on this. We'll get to that game. We're going to get to the Thursday night game, which is obviously a banger, Ravens Chiefs last, because people might be listening to this on Friday and it'll be moot for them. So we're going to do that one last, and we're going to start with Packers Eagles in Brazil, Friday night, which I did not know when I scheduled a party on Friday night for my birthday. No big deal.
Whoa, crazy. Sick birthday mention.
No big deal. My actual birthday is Sunday, which is a common occurrence at the beginning of the NFL season. Yeah, the Seahawks have ruined my birthday, I think, quite a few years, losing to the Rams week 1 last season. I am really pumped about this game. And it's funny because it's not really a home game, but the Eagles are the home team. So I am taking the Eagles, and we'll start there. This is your account. You are an Eagles fan, an Eagles expert. And I felt like this was pretty simple. I mean, there's a few things that obviously have to happen, and we're oversimplifying, for every single team, obviously. But it's also just kind of the thing I want to see week 1, which is have Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts solve the blitz. I mean, we could point to a million different things, but and certainly the defense was a massive, massive issue there. And there's a lot of change on that side of the ball, including coordinator. But I feel like if that isn't solved, not just in this game, but for beyond, this Eagle season is probably dead in the water. So it is not an overblown storyline. It was a massive issue for this team last year. It was also an issue the year before for Jalen Hurts, which is why I feel like it's not just a aberration. It is a legitimate thing. Something we spent a lot of time talking about on NFL Live, on this podcast, trying to diagnose what the hell was wrong with the whole operation. And Ben, you've obviously talked about this a lot. I guess the problem, what made it kind of hard to parse was some of it seemed to be Jalen Hurts related. Some of it seemed to be the answers that were given or lack thereof to Jalen Hurts. But we noticed certain tendencies when he was blitzed. It was an offense that heavily threw the ball outside. In fact, against the blitz, it had the highest percentage of throws outside the numbers in the NFL. It was a lot of low percentage throws at times. Now, again, there's a little bit of a chicken egg thing, right? Because it's like, okay, well, how much of that was Brian Johnson, their previous offensive coordinator, not giving Hurts answers? How much of it is Hurts generally preferring to throw outside the numbers and not being a great middle of the field quarterback? Whatever it is, we're going to see week 1 if they figure this thing out, because if I'm new Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley, that's the first thing I'm testing.
Yeah, but my answer for what do the Packers need to do to win was explicitly that. It was test Kellen Moore and test Jalen Hurts, right? Because if you're going to install 95% of it is new offense, right? And this Kellen Moore offense, a lot of words, a lot of checks up at the line of scrimmage, a lot of motions, right? If you're going to put an entirely new offense on the field in week 1, Jalen Hurts did not take any preseason snaps, and it's this complex of an offense. Yeah, first thing I'm doing is sending pressure independent of if that's been a big problem for your quarterback in seasons past, right? Because I want to see, does he know where his hots are? Does he know where his checkdowns are? Does he understand how to get through the progressions? Does he know, which side of the field to pick against which coverages? Like, I just want to test your operation right now. I want to see if I can get you to blow some protections, blow some calls, and pick up some easy stops. Throw in the fact that, like you said, Jalen Hurts last year, 3rd worst EPA per drop back against 6+ rushers. He was like, Hurts is weird. He's a good quarterback when pressured by the metrics, but a bad quarterback when blitzed by the metrics. And that goes back to those percentages of the pie that you were talking about. When Hurts gets blitzed, he has like a very clear script, right? He wants to get out of the pocket right away. Like, he does not want to stay in there and take a hit. He just wants to leave. He always wants to get out to his right. And accordingly, he's going to cut the field in half. And so you can blitz him. And we first saw Todd Bowles start doing this when he played him 2021 season in the wild card round. You can blitz him not to sack him, not to get a free rusher and 2nd and 18, whatever, but rather blitz him knowing that he will flush to his right. And then coverage-wise, you can just be prepared for that. You can have a corner sitting in the flat. You can have a deep safety over that half, and you take away that half of the field. He's not going to move to his left, and all of a sudden that offense becomes very one-dimensional. And so you got to test the operation in the new Kellen Moore offense, and you have to test the tendencies and test kind of the habitual escaping of the pocket from Jalen Hurts. And if one of those two things breaks, I think it's a long night for the Eagles offensively.
The other thing I'm kind of fascinated to see on that side of the ball is this Jeff Hafley defense with, taking over for Green Bay. The assumption has been that coming from Boston College, he will play a ton of single high. That is what they did there. Some cover 1, cover 3. You don't want to do that against these Philadelphia Eagles and A.J. Brown. Even last year, when the offense had its ups and downs, they still feasted on single high coverage. In fact, big problem with the offense was defenses didn't fear Jalen Hurts as a runner that much and were happy to actually play more split safety and 2 high looks against them. So I'm actually interested in seeing if Hafley maybe departs from some of the tendencies we saw in college because of this particular matchup.
Yeah, and I will say, I agree with the reads on Hafley coming from Boston College and his background. With that said, teams tend to tell you what they're doing by the personnel that they have. And the Packers went and signed Xavier McKinney, who obviously can play the post. I'm not ignoring the fact that he can be a single high player. But they went and signed Xavier McKinney from the Giants to play safety, who McKinney, his strength is versatility. His strength is he does everything very well. And then drafted Javon Bullard, the safety out of Georgia, who the book on Bullard coming out of Georgia was that he could kind of do everything well, right? He played over the nickel for them. He'd play into the box for them. And so I look at the 2 guys who are expected to start at safety, and I say to myself, all right, I could play single high the whole time if I wanted to. McKinney can play the post and Bullard can play the box. Great. But what makes these guys cool is that I can actually move them around and they can do the other person's job a little bit. And so I also think in this game and also in the season, I expect Hafley to be a little bit more coverage versatile, right? Coverage mixing than I think people are expecting given the Boston College numbers.
To put a bow on this game, part of the reason I am so focused on this side of the ball is because, frankly, the best case scenario for the Eagles and the worst case scenario for the Packers to me is if this thing ends up being a shootout, because I feel like this Packers offense matches up really well with the Eagles defense. Ben, I mean, am I wrong, or do you agree with me where the best case for Philadelphia is a high scoring game?
Yeah, well, we have so many question marks right now with the Eagles back 7, right? Devin White injured. Looks like Nakobe Dean is going to be playing at linebacker next to Zach Bond. It's not the best linebacker duo you've ever heard of. We don't know who's going to be the starting outside corner yet. Quinion Mitchell, is he going to be outside? Is he going to be in the slot? Are they going to put Isaiah Rodgers outside? There's so many questions that, feels like the Packers should get their points. And accordingly, if the Eagles can't match stride for stride, the fact that the Packers are dogs in this game was surprising to me. I personally think the Packers are. Oh yeah. The Packers are 2.5-point dogs. It's like plus 120 on the money line. Obviously, like not actually a home game for the Eagles.
Right. That's so interesting. Wow.
So that's power rankings wise, just saying the Eagles are a better team flat out than the Packers, which that's not my power rankings personally. So yeah, I like the Packers.
That linebacker, I mean, the linebacker dude just scares me so much because Matt LaFleur and this Packers offense, they're so good at preying on linebackers. In fact, I mean, it shows up in a lot of the numbers, one of which the Packers and this is over the course of the entire season, so it wasn't even just the hot half, on throws 0 to 10 yards, first in EPA per play. Where do you think your Philadelphia Eagles last year ranked versus those throws?
Was it defensively? It starts with a 3. I'll tell you that right now.
It starts with a 3 and it ends with a 2. All right. We'll see if that looks better. Okay. Steelers Falcons. Let's do this next.
Okay.
Russell Wilson. I went first last time, so you can go first this time. What do the Steelers have to do to pull this one off?
Yeah, this is you got to test Cousins right away, right? The strength of the Steelers defense was the pass rush. TJ Watt and the new extended Cam Hayward rightfully getting the headlines, but Keanu Benton in his second year from defensive tackle, Alex Highsmith on the outside, like it is just it's a really, really good front four in Pittsburgh. And that Falcons line is good, but Cousins is a pretty unmoving target there in the pocket, and he's a 36-year-old coming off an Achilles, right? And so my objective is to heat him up pretty quick and see how much he tests that back foot, see how willing he is to hold the ball for that extra beat against pressure, right? A lot of those best Minnesota throws from Cousins were because he was fearless in the face of an oncoming rusher. He was really comfortable in a dirty pocket. Is he going to feel the same way now coming off the injury? So a legitimate question. I think Joey Porter Jr., who's the outside corner there, has what it takes to fight Drake London, right? Step for step. You're going to lose a couple reps when you play corner, but Porter Jr. is a real talent. Kyle Pitts banged up, so potentially a very siloed passing game there. Like Drake London's kind of your only primary target there down the field. So if Porter Jr. can handle his business and I can make Cousins hold on the ball for a half second, I think that, it is reasonable to expect him to be kind of shaky in his first live reps back coming off that injury. Do that and then play a slobber knocker of a Steelers game as per usual, win this thing 16-15 and take home a disgusting win.
16-15 is it?
The Steelers scores are never righteous. They're never like good and neat. Nasty. There's always a number there that shouldn't be there.
I was laughing when you started talking because literally my point for the Falcons was, can you protect Cousins? So we're basically, once again, just the inverse. My note was the Steelers pass rush was 7th in pass rush win. The Falcons offensive line was 11th in pass block win. One would think playing with a quarterback who, has the ability to get the ball out pretty quickly should help in that regard too, is not going to drag that up by extending plays unless, his Achilles was replaced with like a 21-year-old's Achilles or something. I don't know what those surgeries do. One does not imagine Kirk Cousins is going to be more mobile post Achilles surgery. So yeah, and it is important for all the reasons you outlined. The Porter thing too is something I wrote down because what I noted to myself is if Kirk has time, there are there are players in this Steelers secondary that they can hunt, even without Kyle Pitts. And I understand there's question marks outside of Drake London. First of all, I want to start here. I like Joey Porter Jr. I think he's great. I think he's a terrific man corner. I'm not sure he can lock down London. So even if, he's good, but he's also kind of a little bit of a tall poppy, I think, in a pretty bad cornerback room. But that said, I have enough faith in this scheme and Kirk Cousins. If he is protected, I do think that they can find mismatches, not just in the secondary, but also, you're talking about throwing to Bijan, getting him the ball in space, working other parts of the field. And I feel like that's kind of ball game there because the Steelers pass rush should be phenomenal. And that to me is just like whoever wins that matchup in the trenches, it's probably going to determine how this thing plays out.
Yeah. The Steelers are currently slotted right now to start a UDFA rookie at nickel corner. The young man named Beanie Bishop, which I really hope Beanie Bishop is good because that name is sick.
So cute.
But I don't know much about Beanie Bishop. In general, though, UDFA nickel. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to go 11 personnel. That means Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod on the field, which isn't the best wide receiver 2 and 3 I've ever heard. But listen, we should be able to get open on Beanie Bishop, right? Like, let's test the guy in his first ever NFL action. And so this feels like the sort of game where the Falcons, who are so Drake London, wide receiver 1, Bijan, that top running back. This feels like the sort of game where Caleb McGarry's play becomes very important and Darnell Mooney's play becomes very important. And some of the depth of the Falcons gets tested. Because right now, the top level of the Falcons offense, I love. I think Bijan's going to go nuts. I think Drake's going to go nuts. I think Kyle Pitts is going to go nuts. Beyond that, I have questions. And like even if Kyle Pitts does play, Patrick Queen now at linebacker for the Steelers, Mika Fitzpatrick at safety, like they got some guys. And so we're going to test the depth here in Atlanta. We're going to test some of the B-level players on that offense.
Okay, I'm worried that it's going to happen again for Cardinals Bills, because there really is only one thing I think that makes this competitive if it happens. And that's why I'm singling it out for the Bills, because I'm operating under the assumption that the Bills offense, even with all the change and whatever, should not have any issues with the Cardinals defense that I personally project to be one of the worst in the NFL, potentially the worst in the league. However, I wrote for the Bills. You're laughing because I'm sure you got the other side of this. Can you stop this team on the ground? I've talked a lot about the Cardinals' run game and how awesome it was. So here's the thing. This Bills defense, which lost Matt Milano, you're putting in little Dorian Williams, who's played a lot, but they primarily defend 12 and 13 personnel, 12 personnel, which Cardinals use a great deal, and I expect them to use, again, a great deal with nickel. In fact, they defend 12 personnel with nickel 97% of the time, which is just
don't play base. They don't play base. They don't play 5 defensive linemen. They don't do it.
They're not going to play a lot of dime this year either. I mean, Taron Johnson is their best defensive player in the back. So, and he is an awesome tackler and such a great player in coverage. But if this Cardinals team puts multiple tight ends on the field and does what they did in the second half of last season, which is basically say, F you, we are going to run this ball down your throats, Ben, I'm not sure Buffalo can stop them in that way.
Yeah, no, I have the exact same thing. The Cardinals led the league last year in 13 personnel rate, 3 tight ends on the field. Now, they don't have the same depth of tight end that they used to, right? They have a rookie in Tip Ryman. They have Elijah Higgins, who was a cut from the Dolphins last year. It's their tight end 2 behind Trey McBride. And so, like, with that, plus the whole, like, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch hype train considered, I'm worried that the Cardinals, like, overall this season want to be less of a multiple tight end team and more of a multiple wide receiver team. But in this individual game, when you go up against the Bills, you put the bodies on the field, you put Kyler under center, and you go. Even you also put Kyler in shotgun with multiple tight ends on the field, and you involve the quarterback in the running game. When you go and you look historically at those, like, stupid Bills games, and I don't feel like I need to explain that, but the ones where, like, they're like 13-point favorites and they inevitably end up in, like, 1-score games, Josh Allen heroics in the fourth quarter, there's usually a couple turnovers, right, from the offense. And then defensively, they're usually sitting in nickel and getting absolutely deleted in the running game by a team that's willing to involve the quarterback or put heavy personnel on the field. And we know that Drew Petzing, who's the OC there with the Cardinals, is willing to involve the quarterback in the running game with Kyler and willing to put multiple tight ends on the field. And so if we get, like, a fine Josh Allen game and he doesn't have, some of his week 1 games, the Jets last year, Steelers a few years ago, some of his week 1 games, he tends to, like, be so happy to be playing football again that he kind of goes a little bit crazy. So if we get a regular Josh Allen game, the Bills should be fine. But there are worlds where offensively they make a couple mistakes early, and all of a sudden this game gets very short very quick, and the Cardinals are just running it for 5 yards a pop on every single down.
The way you just talked about Josh Allen right there is how I talk about Lenny when we have visitors, and I'm like, he's just really happy right now. He's just really oversuit. I promise. This is not who he is. He's just got the zoomies. And
Nugget is the exact same way. Where, like, Nug charges the door, and I'm like, listen, she's just stunned that you're here. In 2 minutes, she will be asleep on the couch. I promise you. Let's just get through it. Josh Allen, week 1, he's just got the zoomies a little bit.
But that's the other thing, right? I think we both agree. So for the Bills, defensively, I think stopping the run is going to be a challenge against this Cardinals ground game. And then the other thing is Josh Allen, just don't go full, like, zoomies, play with, like, you're so much better than this defense, right? Exactly. I don't even care. Like, you don't, the new wide receiver group and young and whatever, you're fine. You're fine. Right. You do not need to force any, like, I know he's going to be there and he's going to be looking at that, tiny, tiny hole shot. And he's going to be thinking, yeah, man. And I need the angel on his shoulder to be like, it's the Cardinals defense. Don't do it, Josh.
If the prompt were not like, how does this team win? But rather like, what are you most interested to see in week 1? Very, very high on my list would have been this Bills offense and kind of the expected target distribution and the usage. It seems like Curtis Samuel is going to be able to go, so we should see them kind of at full strength with weapons. Samuel, Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, the rookie. We have 2 tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox. How are they going to be used? Like, I'm fascinated to see what the Bills offense looks like. Obviously, the quarterback needs to execute as planned, but, like, this team down the stretch with Joe Brady, they're running the ball great, and they, they now want to be this distribution kind of spread them out, pop and chop sort of a team. I'm very interested to see what it looks like. Cardinals defense should not be a good test for it, and hopefully it is not a good test for it.
Titans-Bears, sneaky fun game.
Sneaky fun game.
Okay, so the Bears are fun for very obvious reasons. The Titans, sneaky, fascinating team to me this year. The team that I've been most loath to make bold predictions about because I feel like one of the teams that could really just go in so many different directions because of the addition of so many competent veterans, which, however you feel about that from a team building strategy, it means that they're going to not be terrible, I believe. But I'm on the Bears side of this. So you have the Titans. So you go first, and then I'll hit the Bears.
Yeah. In order for the Titans to win this new look offensive line's got to hold up, right? And I think that one of the reasons I, like you, am very reticent to know anything about the Titans just yet is because left tackle J.C. Latham is new, right? First round draft pick. Center Lloyd Cushenberry came in from Denver. He's a free agent acquisition. We have Dylan Radins, who's now the starting right guard. He was not the starting right guard in camp, but Sadiq Charles just retired in the summer. And so Radins won the job on virtue of that. And then right tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere, who had like some promise as a rookie in 22, and then 23 missed a ton of time with both the suspension and injury. And so I know very little about this offensive line and how well it'll perform now in an offense that is dramatically different than it was last year. Last year, they were protected, a lot of running game, a lot of play action game, a lot of screen. This year, if it's going to be a Brian Callahan offense, they're driving me nuts being on the same team. If this is going to be a Brian Callahan offense, it's going to be a little bit more spread, a little bit more gun. It's going to be 5 in protection, and that's about that. You need to be able to hold up. Obviously, this Bears pass rush isn't like crazy, but Montez Sweat is a good rusher objectively, right? They have a Jervin Dexter in year 2 to rush from defensive tackle. They got guys who, if you let them, will beat Will Levis up and win the game for you flat. And so this line is the big question mark for me. There's a lot of question marks on the Titans overall just because of all the newness, all the players brought in. But the big question mark is how's this line going to play? That's what I want to see week 1.
I'm interested in that. I'm very interested in Levis's time to throw because I think the Bears defense, the way they win is this secondary, enables the pass rush to get home rather than the reverse being true. So I'm curious to see, with that in mind, and also with the fact that the deep pass rush is so skewed towards one player, Montez Sweat. I know that you mentioned the defensive tackles and whatnot. Sort of what kind of game plan they come out with because of it is a very specific type of defense. I'm on the other side of the ball finally, so we're not just flipping the same topic.
Repeating,
for the Bears, I just wrote, can Caleb Williams avoid negative plays? Because it was such a fascinating preseason. It was so much like college, frankly, right? And I think we saw why Caleb Williams was super special, but we didn't really see. Is he good at doing some of the things successfully and efficiently that he needs to do for this offense to be successful in the NFL against real teams? And part of the reason I find this interesting, Ben, is what I alluded to at the top, which is this Titans defense is better. They really are. I mean, they've added a lot of competent players. Again, I don't love all of the signings, but I'm sorry, if you add Quandre Diggs and obviously L'Jarius Sneed and Awuzie and they just added Ernest Jones at linebacker, right? And then of course you've got Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry. Landry played well last year, and he's opposite Arden Key. All of a sudden, I step back and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
they're pretty good. And the problem, if the Bears offense has one potential flaw, it would be this offensive line, and they might win, and they might force Caleb Williams to hold on to the football and make some bad decisions and bail. And I guess I want to see, and for the Chicago to win this, he needs to avoid taking horrible sacks, super sacks, and turning the ball over. And I think if he can avoid those things and make some progress there in his time to throw, I think they should be able to win.
Yeah. It's no surprise. Rookie quarterbacks tend to be really bad on their first start, straight up against the spread. Like this, technically, you're supposed to be like, oh, it takes some time. I think most teams that draft a rookie quarterback are worse than the Bears team. I think most rookie quarterbacks that get drafted and play week 1 are worse than Caleb Williams. And so I'm holding out some hope for a good week 1 performance. But I have no doubt that there's going to be missed plays, and there's going to be bad mistakes, and there's going to be 2nd and 18s. There's going to be 3-and-out drives. And it's just okay, the Titans probably won't punish you if you have 1 or 2 of those. I don't think they're a good enough team to do that yet. 3, 4, 5, Will Levis played some reps last year, right? Calvin Ridley's good. They have enough guys that they're going to punish you if you make too many mistakes. And so it's not the worst on ramp, but Caleb's going to have his errors. I think that's inevitable. I think that I'm very interested what the Titans do defensively, schematically, especially back 7-wise. Denard Wilson's the new DC there. He comes over from Baltimore. Oh, Mike McDonald stuff. Yeah, well, listen, you got L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie. You might just be able to line up in man coverage and win some reps. If those guys are what they are and they're healthy, you can just kind of press him, set him, and forget him. Quandre Diggs playing free safety. Monty Hooker in the slot. We got some dudes. And so the Titans defense, I think, can throw a lot of stuff at Caleb that he hasn't seen before schematically. He has the McDonald background. And I also think they can just kind of line up and win some reps if they want to. And so I might be tough sledding, I think, for this Bears offense week 1. But yeah, the Titans, I've looked at Titans plus 4.5 a lot, and I just can't get there because I just don't know enough about the team. There's so much newness that it's very, very challenging to litmus test them right now.
Okay, Patriots, Bengals next. I've got the Bengals at home. The Bengals have Jamar Chase, who practiced today, which makes this a lot simpler. Not that I don't know what the line is. I'm sure even if Jamar Chase was absent, the Bengals would still be favored in this one. But it makes the offense a lot less interesting to me, and the defense more interesting. And my question for, I guess, the Bengals, or the thing that needs to happen for them to win, is I came up with stop the run, because the formula in my mind, Ben, for a Pats upset here is they run the ball and put together a bunch of excruciating drives, and then some gross stuff happens on defense. Maybe you'll get to that. But this Bengals defense was absolutely atrocious against the run last year. Atrocious in every possible way. Power, stuff rate, second level, open field, all very, very, very bad. Different types of runs, under center runs, which I think they're going to see a lot of. Very, very, very bad. And it's mostly the same group there. You know, you got some young players. You want to take a step forward. And we'll see how that plays out. But I think, for Lou Anarumo, other than obviously they gave up a lot of explosives, that's not really a concern of mine against this Pats offense. No offense. So I feel like that's going to be job number 1 for him in week 1.
I do have explosives down as part of mine, right? I do think that in general, not a team for explosives, but Jacoby Brissett, Alex Van Pelt, thinking about what that Browns offense was when those two were playing together. It was under center play action. It was deep dropbacks. We were looking for shots, and obviously the shots are a little bit less scary when they're going to DeMario Douglas and Jalen Polk, but still, I think Polk can be a pretty good player. I think Javon Baker can be a field stretcher for them. I think you have to hunt explosives. You have to test Geno Stone, and they brought Von Bell back. But this secondary was just so bad communication-wise last year that I think you do have to look for your play action shots. This also is going to be a very heavy screen team. The Patriots will be. And you can look for explosives that way too, where you try to get those good looks and get the big run after the catch. And so I have hunt explosives. And then the other thing I added as of 15 minutes before recording was September Burrow ? Because Burrow's on the injury report. He's on the injury report with right wrist, which I was there at camp. They've covered it now extensively. Wonderful beat work there. That Burrow's, he's putting a glove on, he's not putting a glove on, he's gripping the football, but there's times you can see he's flexing the hand still. That was a throwing hand ligament injury, man. That's the sort of thing that lingers. And the fact that he's on the injury report, still full participant, so expected to play week 1, is very interesting to me, because we know that Burrow has at times not had great Septembers, as he, really likes to play and get out there and kind of take a few weeks to get loose, especially coming off of injury. And so I'm personally, I don't think the Patriots are going to win. Obviously, they're not going to win. However, I am very hesitant on full Bengals belief in them being back and ready to go. Oh, Jamar's here. All of our problems are solved. There's a lot to test on that defense, and I want to see Burrow actually grip it and rip it before I fully believe.
Fair. Mm-hmm. Okay, Texans Colts. Whoo, I love this game.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's making main screen. I cannot wait. I've got the Colts. You got the Texans. What do you think the Texans need to do in this one?
Yeah, I throw the ball at Nico Collins until they stop you. Last year against this Gus Bradley defense, which lacks a true corner one, right? They're playing Juju Brent, second-year player on the outside, and also reliably plays a lot of zone coverage, which CJ Stroud just eats up throwing to Nico Collins. Last year against the Colts in week 2, Nico Collins, 7 for 9, 146 yards and a score. In week 18, the win in your in playoff game, 9 for 9 for 195 and a score. Nico Collins was. He just deleted the Colts last year. This is for the routes that he runs and the way that Stroud looks for him. This is the exact sort of defense that Collins is just dominant against. And I think that with Tank Dell coming back from injury and with Stephon Diggs added to the roster, we're kind of forgetting that Nico Collins last year was putting up top 5 efficiency numbers, yards per route run, yards per target, yards after the catch. This was an elite receiver season. And I'm not sure he's an elite receiver, but I do think that he didn't lose any talent when he got the extension. He didn't lose any talent when Tank Dell came back from injury. I think he's still the primary target for this team, and certainly against a defense like the Colts. And so Texans right now, you are walking into this game saying, all right, Nico ate him alive last year. It's the same DC. It's the same cornerback room. It's going to be the same system. Let's grip and rip it. Let's get those big explosives, and let's force them to stop that and put us somewhere else.
So my premise for the Colts was, can you stray from your identity, or
Yeah.
are you going to let CJ Stroud carve you up again? Literally what I wrote down. However, I audibled out of it. So because I was seeing a lot of the same stuff you have. I mean, no, we know CJ Stroud is unbelievable. This offense, pardon me, it's not just Stroud, like the offense. Bobby Slowick's offense, they destroyed zone coverage last year. Stroud had the best QBR in the NFL, 74. The average is 52. Insane. And against Indianapolis in week 18, he had a QBR of 88. But I audibled Ben because I was like, what are you saying, Mina? They're not going to do that. Like, they're not going to completely change up their identity week one. So
Gus Bradley? Yeah.
yeah.
I would not be betting on it.
I pivoted to, can this front four win? And I think that's possible. Like, I think there is a world in which this pass rush, which I do think is going to be pretty good, although you got, Latu's a rookie, obviously, but I think the rest of that defensive line, there's a ton of talent, both interior and outside, and a ton of depth, even with the loss of Samson Ebukam, which hurts a lot. That sucks. But, and then there are just players on this Texans offensive line that don't match up well with them. So for me, a world in which they are capable of stopping them starts up front. Yeah, so I focus on the defense. I mean, could have gone Anthony Richardson. I think like it's a little bit of a challenging matchup because I think the Colts are going to bully teams on the ground. I think the Texans' run defense is going to be excellent again. The Texans defense is kind of one where I want to see it because they've added so many players before I sort of definitively have feelings. It's obvious though with Richardson, just you just can't make the same mistakes that we saw in the preseason. But yeah, I'm going with the defense for this one.
Can I sneak an Anthony Richardson preseason to season take in here real quick?
Get in.
If you told me the Colts win this game, you came for the future and told me the Colts win this game, I think Richardson's 24 for 28 for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like the preseason stuff just like so does not interest me whatsoever, because what Shane Steichen does from a game-to-game week planning perspective is such an enormous delta. The comparison I always make is the Jared Goff era Sean McVay Rams, where Sean McVay just walked into every game and was like, I know more than you do, and my offense is better than yours, and it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good your pressure is. It doesn't matter how good the quarterback is. I got it. And like, to me, Shane is reaching those sorts of levels. And so I think I think there's worlds where we're like, oh, I wonder what Anthony Richardson is in year 2. And then it's just like week 1, they're coming out with, if you saw them last year, they're running like flex bone stuff and single wing stuff. Like they just come out with a playbook that nobody is prepared for. And they just let Richardson be the enormous fast guy throwing a bunch of RPOs and just matriculate the football down the field in a beautiful fashion. And like, I don't think that's going to happen, but there's a little tiny piece of me that's there.
I think that this Texans defense, as much as I like them and as much as I like the line, there are some weaknesses. There are some holes that a really, really good play caller like Shane Steichen can go after at the middle of the field, the spine. There's some questions I have. So definitely within the realm of possibility. It's a great game. Jags Dolphins, Florida, Battle Royale. I've got the Dolphins, and I'm first on this one. I just wrote, can the Jags make Tua hold on to the ball for 2.5 seconds?
the holy number of defending the Dolphins offense.
Can they? Because this Jags pass rush is sick. Problem is, it doesn't matter because Tua Tagovailoa is the other quarterback. Unless you can, on the back end with what you do in coverage, actually make him hold on to the football. And that to me is how, because if you can't do that, you got no chance.
Yeah. 92 degrees is expected in Miami on Sunday. I always forget that when we play September ball in Miami, it's just disgusting. Ugh. And usually it's a big advantage, but they got Jacksonville coming to town. Right. It's the book against the Dolphins. And this is a little bit similar to our Gus Bradley question, because Ryan Nielsen, who's the new DC there in Jacksonville, was just playing man coverage in Atlanta at league leading rates, right? Yep. He was there last year and he said, this is my defense, 4 down and we go too high and we play man coverage and we press and we beat you. Like, if you're going to do that against the Dolphins, you can't press Tyreek. Like, I know L'Jarius Sneed can, but usually they're hiding him and they're running him around, whatever. And you're just going to straight lose if you play that way. Like, Mike McDaniel's got that solved. And so there is another asking a defensive coach to be willing to make an identity switch early in the season with, extra weeks to prepare for a very unique offense. And that, like, my thing for the Jags is like, all right, what do the Jags need to do to win? It's score a lot of points, because in September, like the Dolphins over the last 2 years, first in EPA per play, first in success rate, first in points per drive. Like Mike McDaniel, in both his freshman appearance and his sophomore appearance, came out with stuff schematically that he had not yet shown, for which the league was not yet prepared. And with like the Jonnu Smith edition and like some of the running game stuff that we saw in the preseason, it really feels like year 3 of McDaniel is going to be another, I've got 6 new gadgets that you're not ready for, and I'm going to be able to just walk the football down the field on you. And so
Devin Lloyd, my guy, I'm sorry for whatever the hell's about to happen to you. I'm so sorry.
It's so tough because Devin Lloyd,
it's not your fault. I'm like,
I
want to be like a Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault. Right. It's not your fault. Yeah. Whatever ungodly motions are deployed, it's not your fault. It's going to be a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. So really,
you're on the other side.
So much. Yeah, you can do so much defensively, and like, get your stops, get them a little bit off schedule, get a pick or two. But in reality, like the total for this game is like 49 points. Like Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson, you have to be putting up a number in the high 20s if you're going to keep pace with the Dolphins offense this early in the season.
But is it Doug Peterson who's calling plays?
I cannot tell you how frustrating this makes me.
It's so weird. Well, hopefully we'll learn through visual cues. Okay. To the sexiest game of the week, Panthers Saints. Did you see I think the NFL tweeted Panthers Saints. Go look up the replies. They're so funny to this game.
Okay.
2 very disgruntled fan bases, and there's nothing I love more than a disgruntled fan base. I just love it. I love you guys.
Disgruntled, by the way, only ever used to describe a fan base, but it's a critical word for describing a fan base.
Yeah, better to be that than gruntled. Okay, at least in my regard. You're on the Panthers. I'm on the Saints. You go first. What do the Panthers have to do to win this game?
I was too busy scrolling looking for the replies to check my notes. I have very simply pressure the quarterback, and I think that that sounds very dumb, but obviously Derek Carr, we know Saints starting quarterback, enormous delta for him in terms of play when unpressured versus play when pressured. He just tends to be affected more than the average quarterback. His play when pressured tends to be bottom of the league level. This is particularly important for the Panthers and DC Ejiro Evero because they lost Brian Burns. They lost Frankie Louvu, who were 2 primary pressure players on the outside last offseason. They added Jadeveon Clowney. Mina, you and I are professional football talkers. Can you name who's rushing the passer at edge besides Jadeveon Clowney for this team week 1?
Clavon Chason.
Yeah, they cut Clavon Chason.
I know that because I had the exact inverse note in this game, which is, okay, can the Saints offensive line hold up versus probably the worst pass rush in football? Yeah. And I literally wrote down Brown, Tuttle, Ashawn, Clowney, Chason ? So the answer to your question, no, I don't know who.
Yeah, so they have 2 players in DJ Wanham and Amari Barno who have taken NFL snaps before at the edge and have had some success. Both those guys are injured. They're both on PUP. So right now, besides Jadeveon Clowney, it is Ekuliota, DJ Johnson, rookie, and Jamie Sheriff. Leota was a 2023 UDFA, Sheriff was a 2024 UDFA, and DJ Johnson's a rookie. That's the edge room right now, besides Jadeveon Clowney. The Saints are not good at tackle. Okay, it's really bad. And the fact that the Panthers are just not equipped to handle that in week 1 is so frustrating to me. But somebody has to, whether it's Clowney or Derek Brown from the interior or whatever. Somebody has to pressure Carr. Because if we let Carr be clean in a Clint Kubiak offense, Panthers, I don't think have the firepower to get this done. Which is a shame because the Saints might be like the worst team they play this year, and they're not prepared to beat them where they're weak.
Yeah, and the Panthers don't have the horses on the back end. I think that, again, if Carr is protected, this will be the story of the season for the Saints. If Carr is protected, this can actually absolutely be a competent offense. But it's a very soft landing for the Saints offensive line week 1. I am curious. That was mine. I was on the other side of your point. It was about on the Saints offensive line versus the Panthers pass rush. I am interested in seeing what this Panthers offense looks like week 1 against New Orleans. But I feel like this Panthers pass rush is probably going to be key to this whole thing.
Yeah, right. That Panthers offense, I think, is going to grow over time. The way they talk about bringing Jonathan Brooks on slow and Xavier Legette on slow, I'm curious to see what it looks like. But the Panthers is going to be one you have to watch in October, November, and kind of see them grow as they get older.
I'm interested in seeing if the Panthers can run the ball on New Orleans because it's
Robert Hunt,
New Orleans. Yeah, they invested so much in that, and even if it's Jonathan Brooks isn't there yet, you got Chuba Hubbard. They were talking about Miles Sanders. We'll see, but I think Hubbard behind a better offensive line, they should actually be able to run it against the Saints front, which was very bad against the run last year. All right, we are halfway through.
No, not too bad.
Doing my best. Let's take a quick break. Come back. And at some point, we're going to get to Raiders Chargers. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, we're back. We're not doing Raiders Chargers first in the second half of this episode. We're doing Vikings Giants. This is a fun one, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the Giants. What do they got to do? And I'm focusing on the defense, not the offense. But because I like this defense. I like this defensive front, and I've talked about it a great deal. I think it'll be a very good four-man rush. I'm very interested in seeing Lawrence, Kayvon, Brian Burns, all that. So I wrote, can you just throw Darnold off his rhythm? And that can actually mean getting quick pressure, or it can mean making him hold on to the ball. Both of those things are good outcomes for you, New York, based on the guy we've seen in recent years. I talked about this a little bit when the Vikings, when J.J. McCarthy went down and Sam Darnold became the starter. Looking back at his Carolina season, he was very, very bad when he held up the ball, very, very bad when he got the ball quickly, weirdly amazing in rhythm. So I think for New York, whether that four-man rush can dominate against a very good pass-protecting offensive line, it should be noted, is going to be massive for them.
Yeah, I have down for the Vikings to win this game. Let the other guy lose it for them, right? It is Sam Darnold against Daniel Jones. One of these two quarterbacks will lose the game for their team, right? With turnovers, with bad mistakes. And so if you're Kevin O'Connell, you should be sitting in your room and saying, listen, who's got a better running game between us and the Giants? Should probably be us, right? Aaron Jones over Devin Singletary. We have a better offensive line. We should have a better handoff game. Who's got a better defense? I think that's a little bit more of a debate, but Brian Flores against Daniel Jones, which I went back to see if there was like a historical game, and there isn't. Daniel Jones has never played Brian Flores, but it feels spiritually like Brian Flores should be able to beat up on Daniel Jones for 4 quarters. You should be able to say, listen, like, we think we have a good defensive game plan. We have our corner room isn't that great, but it's not really going to be tested by this Giants wide receiver room. And so let's pressure him. Let's confuse him. Let's drop 8 and then let's rush 6 and let's get the Daniel Jones turnovers that we always know are in there. Let's run the football, take Sam out of the game, and just let the other team's guy make the crippling mistakes. This is very much a game script game, right? Like if there's a early turnover and then a kickoff return touchdown and the Giants are up 14-0, they're going to stay up 14-0, right? I'm not sure the Vikings can throw their way back into this in the same way I don't think the Giants can do in the inverse. And so very much a game script game. Let the other team make their mistakes.
Yeah, I feel like there's potential here with Brian Flores, to your point, for this to be like a very validating game for the Vikings fan base that watched Daniel Jones dice up their soft Ed Donatel defense 2 years ago. That happened. Daniel Jones won a playoff game against this team, and it led to him. It's why he now has $80 million in his pocket. So yeah, like if there's one game where I feel like the fans really want to watch Brian Flores just go nuclear on a quarterback, this would be it. Raiders Chargers. All right, you're first. You're on the Raiders.
Raiders. I have don't let Harbaugh you, right? Which is this Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense wants to run the football, right? The offensive line is improved in the backfield right now. Like I'm worried about J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards long term, but short term, Dobbins is healthy and like Gus Edwards is healthy and like they should have the backs necessary to make this running game that they intend on work. The Raiders, however, were a top 10 defense in rushing game by EPA per play allowed last year, and then they added Christian Wilkins to the mix, who's one of the best, if not the best, interior defensive line run defending players that we have in the league. And so you have to get this team into long and late downs, right? You cannot let this be a 3rd and 4 game. They're going to go for 4th downs. They're going to take the wind out of the ball. They're going to eat a ton of clock, and they're going to try to win this thing 17-14. They're going to do that against anybody. And if you get stuck in that spot, you can't pass your way back into it. I don't think you want Gardner Minshew dropping back 35, 40 times. So this has to be winning on early downs if you're the Raiders. Load the box. Don't let the Chargers get into their game script. Force them to start throwing it to Ladd McConkey, throwing it to Josh Palmer, make them play left-handed. And we know the Chargers not yet equipped to do that. Get Max Crosby over Joe Alt, rush the passer, get off the field.
Yeah, my thought was pretty similar for the Chargers. I wrote, can you do death by 1,000 paper cuts against this defense? Because I do think it's a good defense. However, I think you can go after this linebacker group, which is, it's not terrible, I'm saying. But I think there's players in the secondary that you can go after kind of ruthlessly, and it's not going to be explosive for the most part. And, it's going to be, that ball is going to come out fast, which is something that the Raiders defense did struggle last year against quick passing games. So, and this is kind of similar to what we're going to see a lot of throughout the year, I think, from this Chargers team. But I just think this Raiders defensive front is not one that you want to run on a lot on first down, because I think they're going to be in some pretty disadvantageous situations. So if I'm Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, It's really about getting like that quick passing game going, and just ruthless efficiency is what you're going after here.
Yeah, if you're Gardner, this is a really good game to set the tone for 14 Devontae Adams targets being the expectation every single Sunday, right? Because it's Christian Fulton and Asante Samuel playing on the outside. The Chargers were not great against wide receiver ones last year. They should not be great against wide receiver ones this year. And with Devontae, like Devontae's been receiving record levels of volume, like a team target share basis with the Raiders over the last 2 seasons. And it probably still isn't enough just because of how talented he is, how important it is that he stays in Las Vegas and he is happy with the quarterback situation in the passing game. Week 1, this is a good game to funnel. Just Devontae Adams all the way down the field.
Broncos, Seahawks. I've got the Seahawks who are at home. I expect the Seahawks offense, to perform well in this one, part because my biggest concern about the Seahawks offense is protection, and I'm not terribly worried about this Broncos pass rush. So I'm going on the other side of the ball. Seattle has to stop the run. Horrible run defense last year.
I'm the other side. I'm for the Broncos to win. I'm all about the passing game. So I'm interested to hear this.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is just because the Seahawks run defense was absolutely atrocious last year, and 9th in EVA play, 25th in run DVOA. I do think the Broncos should have a decent rushing attack. They had a decent rushing attack last year. The offensive line, you can criticize them in pass protection, but they were actually quite good at run blocking last season. I like this group of Broncos running backs. They've got a bunch of them, and they're like all kind of fun and different and unique, going from Williams to McLaughlin to Estime to Pirine. And
Pirine's chief now. Pirine's about to be the big Jerick McKinnon.
Oh, that's right.
And so when it was a 4-headed backfield, it was like, wow, all these guys can do something, but they ran out of room.
It's still a good group. I think a world in which the Broncos win this game is them putting together long, excruciating, annoying drives.
Yeah. So for me, I look at the Seahawks defense and I go, okay, there's no way the run defense can be as bad as it was last year, right? Because we have Leonard Williams with Jonathan Hankins, and we have Draymond Jones, and like this, the size and the strength of this team should be in the interior defensive front. Like I think they have to be better against the run than they were last year. I now look at a team that might not have Uchenna Nwosu for this game because of the injuries. A team that has a new safety, right? Kayvon Wallace, Rayshawn Jenkins playing back there. You have a Mike McDonald defense that is highly complex and a lot of different coverage rotations. And then they got to get some new players on the field and get that all done in week 1. And then I look at a Broncos team that I cannot remember a team being more vocal about how impressed they are with their rookie quarterback. Bo is like a captain of this team. Like the Bo agenda has been astonishing and just a rocket ship to the moon over the last month. So to me, like if you're going to win this game, put your money where your mouth is. You have to let them grip and rip it a little bit. I keep saying grip and rip it. It's NFL season. I'm so ready to play some football.
The reason I made that face was not you saying grip and rip it for the 3rd time. It was because this whole thing about make Bo win. I'm like, Sean Payton can say he's the next Peyton Manning all he wants. I don't believe he's going to put him out there and not lean heavily into the run game to go back to that point. Like, I just don't. I think he's going to run the ball a lot. We'll see, or it's going to be a lot of quick passing, which by the way, another thing Seattle was very bad at last year.
And that's what I'm most interested in, because you brought up the Broncos running back room. The Broncos running backs were such an important part of their passing game last year because the amount of checkdowns you got and screens you got and just inherently targeted backs. And if you look at Sean Payton's history, even with the Saints before it was Russ, like they like to use their backs in the passing game. Going back to Bo at Oregon, Bo was such a check down Charlie at times, right? And he obviously used his legs a lot in the preseason. That kind of takes away from your running back targets. But if this becomes a run the football, and then check down sort of a game, I can see that working for Denver. Tariq Woolen, obviously some questions about him as a tackler last season, stepping up, right? We have a whole new linebacker room there. With Jerome Baker and with Tyrell Dodson. So questions about their ability to get out there. Like maybe we can go check down. But do we trust a rookie quarterback to have that good of an operation? 13-play drives, 14-play drives on the road in Seattle. No false starts, no illegal formations, no delay of games. Like I think you need explosives. And you have a Cortland Sutton. You have a Marvin Mims. You have a Josh Reynolds, who was like top 5 in explosive receiving rate last year for the Lions. Like you have the players necessary to be able to push the ball down the field. In theory, yes. That's what I've been led to believe. That's what I've been told.
Your whole answer feels like a troll. I'm just gonna say that. It feels like you're like, oh, Broncos Twitter, you got the dude. All right, great. Let's see. Oh, you really believe in him? Air it out, baby.
If you aren't willing to give the ball to Bo and let him run the passing attack at all 3 levels against this Seattle defense, against whom will you feel comfortable to doing it?
Wow, mean. Do you agree, before we move on, do you agree that this is a pretty good situation for the Seahawks offense, though?
Yeah. So I talked about Survivor at the
Don't throw
beginning.
it, Sir Can. Okay, good. Problem
Yeah,
solved.
we talked
Move
about
on.
Survivor at the beginning. I'm picking the Seahawks. Just a home game. The new head coach.
I can't for emotional reasons. It's too much to put on my plate, but yeah.
So let me ask you this: like, obviously, Seattle home game. Do we like the last time Seattle played Denver in Week 1 was one of my favorite games ever, right? Like that was just that unbelievable environment experience. Is there still enough animosity? Like, do we think Seattle cares about the fact that this is Denver, or is it just over because there's no Russ? Not at all.
Yeah,
Dang.
What did Denver
I want a little bit more of that.
If anything, we got they those picks turned into Devin Witherspoon and Charles Cross. It's all over now. Yeah, I think the reason I'm staying away from this, not just because of the emotional side, but because I do think Sean Payton can find the weaknesses in this defense. So that is the only thing that scares me there. Cowboys Browns is next. I'm on the Browns. You're on the Cowboys. You can go first. What do the Cowboys need to do?
I have protect Tyler Guyton so you can protect Dak.
Wait, I wrote Myles Garrett, welcome Tyler Guyton to the NFL.
It's very clear what we're working on, all right? It's pretty clear what the matchup of this game is, right? Now, Tyler Guyton is the rookie left tackle out of Oklahoma. He's replacing Tyron Smith. Tyler Smith is staying at left guard. Everybody should be very impressed that I got those names right. It's the first time I've done it all offseason. Also, we have, not for nothing, but center Cooper Beebe, third-round rookie, is going to be playing there as well. And so to protect Tyler Guyton, you don't have to worry as much about Beebe against the Browns' interior pass rush. But this pass rush, obviously, it was dominant, and the Browns' defense was dominant. But the Browns' defense was primarily a middle-of-the-field closed defense. Played with one single high safety. Played a lot of cover one, man coverage, a lot of cover three, zone coverage. Last year, Dak Prescott, the best quarterback in the league against single high coverage, right? Like he's seen so much. He's such a good processor, and he knows how to pick his matchups. He was first in EPA per play, first in success rate. He was top 5 in explosive play rate, top 5 in first down rate. Like just he was remarkably better against middle of the field closed, single deep safety than anything split field. And so I'm confident in his ability to win against the Browns back seven. I'm confident in his ability to find the weak spots, throw within rhythm, get the one-on-one matchups. But only if he gets the requisite time. And so you're going to have to get Jake Ferguson over there and put him next to Tyler Guyton to get a chip going. I think Ezekiel Elliott, who we've talked a lot about how they brought him in to carry some carries and, short yardage, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Zeke's a really good pass protector. I think you're going to see a lot of Zeke in this game just to go and slide to that side and help Tyler Guyton out when you get Myles Garrett or even Zadarius Smith over him. And so protect Tyler Guyton, that you may protect Dak Prescott, that he may be good against this Browns passing defense.
Well, it's funny you mentioned all that because one of the first questions I had when I was thinking about the matchup was, and this was a question I had about the Browns defense generally, are you going to stick to the identity we saw last year, or are we going to see some variation after you got kind of pantsed in the playoffs? And then I thought about it, and I was like, this isn't really the game where that you do that because your best chance of winning is everything you just talked about. It's your 4-man rush. And and also, by the way, as good as Dak Prescott was against man coverage, single high coverage, the Browns have excellent cornerbacks. And if you can take out CeeDee Lamb, they don't really have other options, especially if guys are staying in to help.
Crazy Jake Ferguson erasure, my son.
So I just feel like the Browns don't have to do anything crazy in this one on defense. I stayed away from the other side of the ball because I just don't know what the hell this Browns offense is going to look like. So I was just like, we'll see.
It's going to look like a spread 2019-2020 Texans team with a quarterback that can't play like that anymore. Well, I think it's going to be reprehensible.
One thing I'm interested about that is if they do spread things out and lean more on RPOs, what does the run game look like? Because this is not a good run defense. So that's something interesting, but I think we all agree it's the Garrett Tyler Guyton matchup. Okay, Commanders Bucs. I'm on the Bucs in this one. You've got the new look Washington Commanders, so you go first.
Yeah, I said don't let Jaden get Bowlesed, right? Because Todd Bowles is the head coach of the Buccaneers and has been a head coach / DC in the league for over a decade. Is real gnarly to play against for rookies. And is real gnarly to play against for scrambling quarterbacks, right? I brought up way in the beginning of this episode, him against Jalen Hurts and kind of that blitz plan with the intent to move him outside of the pocket. You go and you look at him against rookie quarterbacks since he became the head coach of the Bucs, or excuse me, in his head coaching career. He is 10-4 against rookies, barring like one Desmond Ridder game where the starters were benched. He's been very, very good against young quarterbacks because of the complexity of the blitzes. He'll send guys from anywhere. And he's been very good against scramblers because he rushes with the intent to displace the scrambler. He's not just trying to get him. He's trying to get him to move and then cut the field in half. So really, really a good DC, well-equipped to deal with Jaden Daniels' proclivities. And so you need something from Cliff Kingsbury here. You need something from the running game here. You need a something to fall on, easy completions and screen game and running game, such that you're not constantly living in drop back pass. Because if the Commanders are down early, or if they're behind the sticks and they're living in drop back pass against this Bucs defense, it is OVER over. I mean, I just do not see the world for them. And so stay ahead of the sticks, take your shots on 1st and 10. Don't put this game on Jaden's shoulders too early. You obviously want him to be that player later. This is not the defense to have him bear that responsibility on.
Yeah, I first with the Bucs, I wrote tackle just because I think that Cliff Kingsbury's game plan is going to be a lot of tempo, get the ball out quickly, a lot of RPOs, kind of like what we saw in Jaden Daniels' second preseason outing against this Bulls defense, rather than letting them enact what sort of atrocities he has in mind, just play super fast. But that would require the Bucs to tackle in the back end, which I think they're capable of, some more than others. But the other thing I wrote is Mike Evans, 10 targets. Because there's no one on this Commanders team who can stop Mike Evans when Mike Evans is being Mike Evans. And if that connection is there and he has a big game, it's hard for me to imagine this Bucs offense not having success.
That Commanders-Buccaneers tackle point is such a critical and a good one, because the one thing that doesn't sit right with me with this Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels pairing, which
one thing, it's just one thing.
Well, I was gonna say that obviously there's a couple of things, but I kind of get where their heads at with the whole Cliff into Jaden Daniels and how that all could work together. The thing that I just cannot get my head around is a Cliff team is just going to have such a shallow depth of target on so many plays, like all these wide receiver screens he throws, all of this back behind the line of scrimmage sort of stuff. If you're going to live like that, you need to have tackle breakers. You just have to have guys who are good after the catch. And on a team with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Olamide Zaccheaus theoretically being your starting 3 receivers, Luke McCaffrey there at 4 as well, with tight end Zach Ertz probably being the starter early on before Ben and Sinnott get started, with Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson as the backs, I love Terry, but there isn't a single above average tackle breaker on the team. So how are you going to live like this? I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Trade for Debo. There, problem solved. I did it.
The recently contract restructured Debo Samuel, unfortunately. Should have got that done a little earlier.
Okay. The Sunday night banger, Rams-Lions. What a game. So they really, these schedule makers know what they're doing with these night games this week. We will end, of course, as I teased at the beginning, with the opener. But first, Rams-Lions. You're on the Rams. I'm on the Lions. And I wrote, can this Lions pass rush stop this from being a shootout? Mm-hmm. I think that the Rams defense is going to really have a hard time with Detroit. So I'm just moving off of that. I thought about that. They're very young, and this Lions offense and the way they're built and all the things they do, I think are going to present a lot of problems for them. Could be wrong. We'll see. So in my mind, the way this goes south for the Lions, who are the favorite, is if it turns into a shootout in the dome, Matthew Stafford goes nuclear, which is entirely possible. Certainly, the Lions pass defense we saw last year gave up a lot of games like that. But this Rams team, as much as I love this Rams offense and as optimistic as I am about them, they're down a couple of starting tackles, it looks like. And there's a lot of just movement, and Steve Avila's playing guard, and just issues there. And the Lions pass defense secondary, I want to see it before I believe it. Obviously a lot of changes we've talked about. To me, the question is, Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport is playing in this. Mm-hmm. That interior pass rush with DJ Reader, can you cook? Because if they can, I think that they can win enough drives to stop this from becoming a shootout. Yeah,
the Rams have behaved so much like such a massive red flag team in the last month. It worries me so deeply. Like, what do you mean it's weird we're putting our starting running back as a punt returner? That's a very standard behavior in 2024. Yeah, no, we signed Jonah Jackson to play guard to move Steve Avila to center, but actually we're going to do it the other way. We just recently made this decision, and it's totally fine. There's a lot going on that has me concerned. For the Rams to beat the Lions here, I wrote down, get one stop, right? I think that the world where you're winning this game is a shootout world, right? I expect it to be a very high scoring game. I do think that they can offensively keep pace with the Lions, even with some of the offensive line injuries, even with Puka Nacua being questionable. I still have a lot of faith in early season Sean McVay, in Matthew Stafford. If Nacua and Kupp are both healthy, we know this offense can be really, really dangerous. So accordingly, now it's our defense is not going to win us the game. It's probably not going to look good from a metric perspective. But can we get that one third down stop there in the second half? Can we get that one drive where we get ahead of the sticks and we're able to unlock things? Because there's no Who's the winner on this defense? Especially now that Ernest Jones is gone, because back in the day it was 3rd and 6. Let's get an Aaron Donald on one side, Ernest Jones on a blitz. Jones was an excellent blitzer, whatever. Now there's no Donald and there's no Jones. So like there's no consistent outside edge rusher. Like Kobe Turner was good opposite Donald last year. I don't know if he's going to find the same success this year. You have Braden Fisk, you have Jared Verse, you have all these like older names in the secondary who maybe have one good year left. But I just don't understand who's supposed to be the winner here. And so accordingly, you got to get ahead of the sticks. You got to scheme something up from Chris Shula, the first year DC. You got to get that one stop in a 1-score game to win this thing just before the bell.
I think this Rams defensive front has good players, and I think by the end of the season, they will be good at playing together. I don't like them against the best offensive line in the entire NFL. So it's a tough matchup for them.
And like, one of the things that's very frustrating to me with this Rams defensive line is like, so Kobe Turner, good metrics last year, great metrics, pass rush win rate, excellent. And you go and you look and you're like, oh, but there was no attention because Aaron Donald was getting the double teams, and so he was all freed up. And no, he was getting a lot of double teams. He was great against the double teams. But you can't present any numbers to me at all. Not a single combination of stats that would convince me that the departure of Aaron Donald will not negatively affect the play of the other guys on the line. Like there are truths in the world. There's death, there's taxes, and there's Aaron Donald's very good and scary. So like he was a rising tide for every level of that defense, and I don't see how removing him is going to have like less of an impact than Rams fans want it to have.
Jets Niners Monday Night Football. I'm going to be there. Monday NFL Live is on site for 2 hours ahead of Monday Night Countdown at Levi's, which I've never been to, so I'm excited about that. So I will be there. Brandon Ayuk will be there.
I'll be on ESPN 2. Well, you're on ESPN 1.
Let's go.
Team.
Counter programming. Trent Williams will be there. Hassan Reddick is in Japan now.
Zach Rosenblatt, who covers the Jets, I want to say for The Athletic, posted a video of Hassan Reddick watching a magic trick like 2 days ago. And it was unclear if like Rosenblatt was where Hassan Reddick is or if Reddick was like in the facility. It was just him like watching a magic trick.
I love explaining stuff to my husband who doesn't follow football. Right. So I was talking about the game and he's like, okay. I was like, yeah, it's like a great matchup. And I was like, well, except for like, the Jets traded for this player, but he might not be there. And they're probably definitely their best edge rusher. And he was like, okay. Like, why did they trade for him? I was like, well, he wanted to be traded because he wanted a new contract. He's like, okay. He's like, but they didn't do the contract. And I was like, sometimes you just have to explain a football story to a non-football person to truly appreciate how insane it is. And then I was like, well, is he losing money? I told him, and he was like, okay, well, that part doesn't make any sense either. And I was like, a lot of things about this don't make sense. I'm on the Niners, you're on the Jets. So let's start there. What do the New York Jets, let's live in the world where Hassan Reddick is not there, because it does seem to be trending that way. What do they got to do to pull this
just
off?
Run the daggone ball, right? I mean, like you don't know exactly what Rodgers is going to be for you right now. You didn't see him in the preseason. Maybe they know, but we don't, right? And my idea of Rodgers' ceiling at his age off his injury is pretty capped at this point. Like, I just don't think he's going to be MVP caliber Rodgers. So I think you already want to be a little bit run heavy. This Niners defense last year, 27th in success rate against handoffs, right? Like just like not a good team against designed rushes whatsoever. They have an Eric Armstead departure in the offseason, and then Dre Greenlaw is going to be absent from this game. He's hurt. Leonard Floyd is hurt, probably going to be absent from this game. Drake Jackson is hurt, definitely going to be absent from this game. Yeturgos Matos hurt, probably going to be absent from this game. Like, they are thin in the defensive front seven. They obviously have a new approach, right? About Nick Sorensen is the new DC there. Brandon Staley kind of brought on as a senior defensive quality, whatever. So maybe we'll see something schematically that's new. But when this Niners defense lost, even in the heyday of the Saleh and D'Amico years, it was losing in the running game because they're a pretty simple front. So if you're the Jets and you have a Breece Hall back there, you have a retooled offensive line that you apparently love, listen, take the air out of the football, keep that opposing offense on the other sideline, and beat this Niners run defense that was extremely unreliable, very suspect last season. People still talk about the Niners.
You're encroaching on my take a little bit, which is obviously the inverse of your take, which is I wrote down stop Breece Hall. We're basically Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia, right?
Yeah. Which, by the way, I watched that whole thing without realizing that was Matt Patricia. I made it to the end without figuring out who that was, and then I had to go back and reappreciate it.
Who is this take god? This this incredible ball knower wearing a unbuttoned button-down shirt. It was like, somewhat facile or obvious analysis then, but this is it's very important to this game because as you alluded to, then this is the thing the Niners struggled with. I am interested in seeing structurally, and this is why I kind of raised my eyebrows when you mentioned Nick Sorensen, if they do anything different. Because part of the reason they were so bad against the run was I don't say by design. That sounds like it was intentional, but this is a defense that has played a ton of light boxes in the D'Amico Ryans era, and that continued last year with Steve Wilkes, the 5th most light boxes in the NFL. But they were 29th in success rate. And at a certain point, and you see this a lot of times with defenses like this, it's like, okay, well, if you're not like the Texans or the Jets, where you can stop the run with the light boxes, you have to question, should we be doing this if teams are able to put together these like long grinding drives against us? And I think whether or not they can do so is sort of key to whether or not this actually ends up being tighter than it should be for San Francisco. I also think, this Jets defense is tremendous, but there are players that you can go after. I'm interested in the deployal of Garrett Wilson in this game. I think we'll see him in the slot a fair amount too, getting him away from Sauce Gardner a bit. And yeah, it does start with Breece Hall. So yeah, I guess Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia are right.
Yeah, Niners defense, man. I am just like Sorensen came from the Seattle tree. Like that's where he started as a coach. He was a secondaries coach there for a while. Like this very much feels like Kyle Shanahan going, okay, I tried to bring in a different defensive mind outside of the Saleh and D'Amico Ryans like inherent tree, and that didn't work. So I'm going back to a guy who knows the defense, and we're just going to be fine. But we always do this whenever a defense is good. We always go like, oh, just get schematic guys off the tree. But defense is all about like the fine tuning. It's all about the little adjustments. Like when this Niners defense worked under Saleh and D'Amico, of course it was like schematically they had good stuff, whatever. But it was also because DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Azeez Al-Shaair, Jimmy Ward was fit in the run. Like Jimmy Ward was detonating against the run. Okay, you have Talanoa Hufanga now, but you have health concerns. Like, okay, well, there's no Azeez Al-Shaair now. You have Devondre Campbell. And okay, you've had a lot of departures on the defensive line. Now it's Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, and Leonard Floyd, and Yetur Gross-Matos. And just there's a winnowing that happens. It doesn't happen immediate. It doesn't happen overnight. But just like the little edges that made that defense work get shaved off over time. And all of a sudden, you're running the same stuff schematically. You're in the same family. And you're wondering, why isn't this working the same way? I think the Niners defense, like, I do not think it is going to be good against the run this year.
Yeah, and on the topic of like kind of like the losing some of the edges and losing your players, like, no Dre Greenlaw. There's places on this defense that they're really, really good, but there even in the past game, there are places that you can attack. So
they brought in Isaac Yiadom to solve the corner problem, because last year when you got them in nickel, right, and you had Traverse Ward on the outside and Dalmar Lenore inside, it was Ambry Thomas as the third corner, and everybody was throwing the football at Ambry Thomas, right? Like it's the little stuff that starts to accumulate. Always on defense, it's the little stuff at the bottom of the roster that starts to accumulate that catches up to you.
That's the thing. When people look at this Niners, like, how the hell are they paying all these guys? It's gonna start hitting obviously when they paid Brock Purdy, and you have to start make a decision about Debo. But it's gonna be a lot of these like defensive players who are good,
right?
But just not. It's going to become more of a star.
And you can talk like, right, because like Eric Armstead, you can talk yourself out of like, oh, well, Armstead, he was beyond his prime, he wasn't that good. Sure, but Armstead's still a pretty good player now, right? Like you lost Azeez Al-Shaair a couple years ago. That third linebacker, you wanted to be in base a lot of the time. You lost him, and that hurts you. Yeah, listen. It's very cowardly to be doing. I'm worried about the Niners the literal 11th hour of the NFL offseason, but it's just the entire time I've looked at this team, I'm like, man, I think offensively they'll still be great, but they probably won't be as good as they were last year because of progression. And defensively, man, I don't know. They better have a thing or two up their sleeves because I'm worried.
Still got them in this game, to be clear.
Okay.
Ravens Chiefs.
I forgot, but yeah, we squirreled them away
because some people might have already. So this might be the worst analysis ever. But I'm on the Chiefs. You're on the Ravens. You went first last time, so I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a few things that I think are really interesting here. This is like such a fascinating game from a matches perspective. I ended up going with, can your defense stop the Ravens' play action passing attack?
Okay.
Which there's so many things, like we can point to.
I didn't look at this at all, so I'm interested to hear it.
Yeah, the Chiefs defense was awful against play action last year. One of the few things that they weren't good at. They also struggled against the run, which of course led to so much consternation after the Ravens didn't run the ball. But something that is lost in that is the Ravens also could not run the ball because the Chiefs defensive front was winning so much, and their linebacker group as well. But I feel like this Ravens offense, when I think about what they're going to be this year and how they're going to kill defenses, it is going to be that play action passing attack. And it'll hopefully early on in the season compensate for any issues with the offensive line. And, so last year, here we go. The Chiefs' defense was 26 in QBR. The Ravens' offense was first in QBR off of play action. Mm-hmm. I just feel like when I think about this Ravens team and like, what will it take for them to not only overcome the issues on the offensive line, but like take a leap after they've lost some players on defense and coaching or whatnot, it is that passing game taking a step forward, right? And it's the Chiefs. I love the Chiefs linebackers against the run, but in coverage, there's definitely guys that you can go after. There's also I have questions about how these DBs are going to be deployed.
That's my big question.
Yeah, so I feel like, okay, it's like, all right, you know that the Ravens want to come here and play action you, and I also think they're going to try to run the ball more out of 11, which is going to be interesting, but which is another thing that the Chiefs struggled to stop last year, by the way. But I want to see what Steve Spagnuolo's plan is for all of these young DBs and the linebackers.
Yeah, bringing up running the ball out of 11 is really interesting to me because we're looking at one of the heaviest gun and pistol run teams typically under Lamar, right? They obviously moved away from it a little bit with Todd Monken last year, but in general, you want Lamar in the option game, which means you want to be running the football from the pistol and from the gun. Now pairing with Derrick Henry, who at Tennessee, man, it was put Ryan Tannehill under center and let's give Derrick Henry a 7-yard runway to get some steam up before he comes into contact. So the marriage here is interesting. It is achievable. There's a way that the running game that they create is extremely cool. And I think that when you sat down in Baltimore, you're Eric DeCosta, you're John Harbaugh, and you on the top of a whiteboard write down how do we beat the Chiefs? You underline it 3 times. I think very early on that list, you go, what if we got Derrick Henry, right? What if we just had the ability to just maul and shorten this game and go back to like a really, really explosive and consistent running game in terms of the handoff game, not just Lamar, but the actual handoff game. So I really want to see what that looks like, because if you came from the future and told me that the Ravens won this game, I'm expecting Derrick Henry is a pretty big deal in it. So that running game aspect, how he gets integrated, very interesting to me.
Something I've been obsessed with. I just want to hit that before you move on to your any other Ravens points. Last year the Ravens like never ran the ball in 11 personnel. They used a lot more 11 personnel, which we all expected because you bring in Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr., whatever. But they had the highest pass rate in the league. So I have been wondering, like, okay, and some of that is just because the way they get to their run game with Patrick Carr in the field is so good. And so they're like, why would we deviate from this, right? The reason I'm so interested in this game is this Chiefs defense, so good against the pass, so good in so many ways, allowed 5 yards per carry when teams ran the ball out of 11, 31st in success rate last year. It's largely the same. Gay Jr.'s gone. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like Baltimore, like, you should be able to run the ball, spread things out and run the ball on this team. Will you? I don't know. I don't think we'll know until we see it.
Right. So, okay, it's 1st and 10. You want to run the ball. You're Baltimore. 11 personnel. So who are you putting on the field then? If you're Monken, you're putting Rashad, Zay, and Nelson Aguilar as your 3 receivers, right? Then who's your tight end? You doing Andrews or you doing Ricard? Because the second, if I'm Spagnuolo,
you want to create the run pass conflict.
Yeah, if I'm Spagnuolo on the opposite sideline, the moment I see Ricard in the huddle and there's no other tight ends, I'm like, okay, well, I'm playing base and I'm playing the run. Like, at worst,
but that play action pass to Ricard is going to hit.
Yeah, and that's the thing is with Ricard and Derrick Henry, this is a big part of the problem. With Ricard and Derrick Henry, if you go play action pass, I have to defend 3 players. I do not feel like I have to defend Ricard or defend Derrick Henry out of the backfield at all, right? And that's where I think that we're so in the weeds now.
When Patrick Ricard catches his first pass of the season, I'm going to dunk on you so hard.
For what, 6 yards?
How dare you? How dare you?
This is why we're very deep in the Ravens right now, but I'm very curious to see what happens when Keaton Mitchell gets back to this team, because I am a lot more scared of Ricard plus Keaton in the backfield in terms of dealing with play action pass and dealing with screen game and stuff like that, because Keaton is just so much more scary catching the football than I think Derrick Henry is. And so there's the marriage, the fact that Mark Andrews' role, Isaiah Likely's role, and Patrick Ricard's role are also siloed for this team, at least in 2023, makes kind of playing some gamesmanship really, really tough for the Ravens. So it's a big issue for them to solve. Another big issue for them to solve, transitions, is Lamar against the blitz, right? Because that's historically just been something that he has struggled with. Lamar is 1-4 against Steve Spagnuolo in his career. Now, a lot of those games were Greg Roman games. We only have the one Todd Monken game. This was 2023. But you typically see Spagnuolo just crank the blitz rate up when he plays Lamar Jackson. He's done this against both offensive coordinators now. In the AFC Championship game, a 44% blitz rate. Lamar had a 41% success rate and negative 0.33 EPA per play. Those are both bottom 5 numbers for a single game in his season last year. Going back to Brian Flores with the Dolphins, right? If you blitz Lamar, you blitz some of these scrambling quarterbacks, you get them into a predictable script. And if they don't have good options built into the offense, then you run into some bad plays, you run into some big negatives. That's what you're looking at here.
We're bookending this conversation at the top, talking about Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore. And I think I want to reiterate, emphasize, we are talking about the play caller and the quarterback. This is a problem that they both need to solve in both of these games. It's a problem that Todd Monken solved in the second half against the Houston Texans and Lamar as well. And I think made me a little bit overconfident I was like, it's fine. Lamar's beat the blitz, baby. Right. And then Steve Spagnuolo was like, oh, sure. I'm Steve Spagnuolo. This is going to be insane. Trent Duffy is going to fly out of nowhere like a bat out of hell.
Right. And that's the thing is the first solution for the Ravens has always been wide receiver screen, right? It's always been pivot to wide receiver screen. And in Zay Flowers, you have a really nice screen player. For the Chiefs previously, calling screen against the Chiefs, we got L'Jarius Sneed, we got Trent McDuffie. We're just going to fly down, win the point of the tackle. We're going to make the tackle there. No L'Jarius Sneed anymore. So pretty early. I'm Todd. I'm trying to throw a screen at Jalen Watson. I'm trying to throw a screen at Josh Williams and say, all right, these young men ain't L'Jarius. Do they really want it the same way L'Jarius used to? Because if they don't, then I feel like I can use this a little more frequently.
It's a great game. Can't wait.
It's a good week 1 schedule, man. They got it loaded. We're good.
We got through this entire slate of games in less than an hour and a half. So I don't know, Ben. Might have to do this a little bit more often. Listeners, let me know what you think. Let me know. Leave comments, reviews. You can, even if you don't like it, leave a 5-star review and just be like, I
5-star reviews are actually the only reviews that work. If you do 4 or less stars, it doesn't go through.
Yeah, that's a good point. But let me know about doing the entire. It's funny because I feel like the teams like Ravens fans will be like, stick to 4 or 6 games because they know that we're going to talk about them a lot, and some of the less loved teams might appreciate the wider coverage. But just let me know either way. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think, because this is a moving target for me over the course of the season. But this was a lot of fun. I cannot wait to actually see these games. I cannot wait to reunite Ben in a couple of weeks and talk about the next slate of games. Is there anywhere for folks can check out your work this week?
Just go subscribe to ESPN Daily. That's where I'll be doing my weekly pods, and then I'll be doing my bi-weekly. Is it bi-weekly when it's once every 2 weeks? Yeah.
This is a question that I've never solved.
I don't know how the prefixes work.
There's no way to know.
Once every fortnight, I'll be on the Mina Kimes show. But once every week, I'll be on ESPN Daily. So please go check it out. Me and Clinton have a good time every single Monday talking NFL Sunday. Yeah.
And you're writing for .com how often?
2 times a week. So my first preview column will be out Friday morning, which this pod comes out Thursday, right? So it's coming out on Friday, and then my review columns will be coming out on Tuesday. So please come check it out. ESPN Plus. I just had to teach my mom how to get ESPN Plus, and so I now know how to explain to anybody how to get ESPN Plus. So if you are confused on how to get ESPN Plus, hit me up and I'll walk you through
it. Thank you, as always, to my pals at Omaha Productions producing this show: Kirsten Subecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Kevin Mattice, Tucker Tashjian. You can check it out on YouTube at youtube.com/@Mina Kimes. You can leave feedback about the full game slate there as well. Otherwise, we will be back next week.